How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the Hockey Hacks podcast. I am Mason Hackle. This is the podcast that is all about me studying the best hockey players in addition to the best athletes in the world and sharing that knowledge with the rest of you. This week, I had a few videos come together around the same topic, so I thought I might as well just expand off of it even more. And that is the concept of video feedback and mechanics matching and how it really changed my training and the way that I look at many things in addition to hockey training. So we're going to talk about exactly that. And that is what this article is about. So I start out the article with a comparison, still image of myself and Connor McDavid on the top screen. So basically, before I even discovered video feedback, I never once looked at my own footage. And so I had no idea of how I played, how I moved, and just how I looked and trained and did all of that. I never even thought about using video in this specific way to aid my training. So it it just never came across to me, but it really makes sense to use it, especially when you're doing something like movement and studying something like movement, or you have to play something that is a physical sport that uses your body, just like hockey or any other sport that looks at movement specifically. And it's also well documented that every team nowadays, especially the high level teams, have video coaches to detail out where exactly the players are in relations to what systems they use and plays that they draw out, and even to read plays and patterns that other players use and other teams use. Like, video is now something that is everywhere. It's basically fully accessible. There's no barrier to entry. If you have a phone, you have access to video. There's literally more phones out in the world than there are toilets. Everyone has access to some type of camera nowadays. And it really is one of the best tools to come out in recent human history. And by recent, I mean the past 100 years or so. And what it's done for us is really incredible overall, which I won't get into. I'm just going to relay how it relates to hockey training. The first time I can remember watching myself in games was GoPro footage off of the two corners of a hockey rink, one in each corner. And that was from one of my teammates who uploaded the game footage to a Dropbox folder for our whole team to see. And we would have unlimited access for that. At the time, and the team that I was on, we didn't go over the footage, whether or not like the coaches had time or didn't have time, I don't know. But at the end of the day, we did not go over the footage. I just went over it on my own time if I even wanted to. But really, I was only watching plays and sometimes goals, and even the times where I was hit hard and maybe or maybe not got my bell rung or got a concussion from it. And I was like, that player sucks. Like, why would he do that to me when it's like kind of often my fault for having my head down? And when I moved to South Jersey for junior hockey, we had more access to better game quality footage because the cameras would be set up in your classic hockey game footage area where the camera would be like right in the middle of the ice, right along the red line, and you would see it swing across to both ends and just track the game as it was being played. And like many other teams, we would have occasional video meetings where we would talk over the positioning and systems and where to be at what time and strategize in those specific areas. But even at the time, I knew video had its value, but I had no idea it would become this integral and such a fundamental part of how I train, especially when I go out on the ice now. I'm just going to jump to the first time I saw someone intentionally match the movements of an elite NHLer and use the video for feedback to correct any movement errors. So when I talk about using video a lot, I talk about using it not just to draw up plays, but using it to look at how I'm moving or how any one of my players is moving versus an expert model, in this case being an NHLer. And the first time I saw this was with Jason Yee when he was looking at Nikita Kucherov's shot in a warm-up, and that was very eye-opening. I never knew you could use video to analyze your movement. And when I went through that video, I had many questions, such as, why copy this warm-up shot specifically? And when it maybe doesn't show up in a game setting, the obvious answer to that is, if you remove the situation from the movement and you just look at their movement and try to copy their movement, you're going to end up moving the same. That's what to pay attention to in all of this. I don't care about people's positioning on the ice and plays that they do and plays that they execute, let's say. If you're not moving about 90% of how the best players move, if there's a play that could have been a lot better, if your movement was better, if your general body ability was better, like say if your flexibility was better, if your general strength was better, if your mobility was better, if your movement freedom was better, I'm not going to care as much about your positioning. If your mechanics were better, I'm not going to care about your positioning as much, because I really think this, that you can execute the exact same plays that you're trying to execute if your mechanics were better. I think you can execute the same exact plays you intended to execute if your movement was better. What's the point of executing systems if your team cannot skate? If your team cannot move on the rink, on the ice? You don't know how to move in a boot. You don't know how to shoot. You don't know how to stick handle. You don't know how to control the puck in precise situations. If you don't know how to accept body contact, what's the point in running systems in that case? If, especially offensive systems, if your team can't move. Now you could maybe get away with, let's say, championship teams in massive air quotes if you employ the right systems, also in air quotes. But I really challenge that, because if that worked, you would have the same team every single year. Let's put it this way. This is a thought for everyone to chew on. If systems worked, if systems really worked, you should see the same exact system winning the Stanley Cup every single year. Why do different teams win the Stanley Cup? Why does that happen? Why are there different teams like who win championships? I wonder if it's because the systems in different places actually don't work. I really wonder, like, if you get players, you get a team full of Sidney Crosbys, let's say, are they going to win the Stanley Cup? You get a team full of maybe Austin Matthewses. Are they going to have a chance to get past the second round? Much more likely, because it's like both of them are elite players, and if you copy the rest of them to the rest of your team, it's like that. Wouldn't that be ideal? Isn't that what people think of? Isn't that what people dream of? It's like, wow, I wish I could have more Austin Matthewses on my team. Wow, I wish I could have more Erik Karlssons on my team. Wow, I wish I could have more Sidney Crosbys, Connor McDavid's, Connor Bedard's on my team. Like, why would you not work towards that? Year after year after year, you would be setting yourself up much more likely for championships if you actually set up your team that way, to focus on the mechanicals, if you focus on the mechanics and the skills. So that's like, would that not work? Now, obviously, that's an ideal situation. Maybe it's hypothetical. I have no idea. But I'm approaching it from the mindset that any skill can be learned. Any skill can be learned. Any movement can be learned. Things that you learned before can be unlearned to make something better. Removing errors is much more impactful than adding positives and adding more. If you remove errors in your movement, which is what these best players are doing, you're going to end up moving like them a lot more. They don't make movement errors. The best players don't make movement errors. That's why they're so good. If you get everyone on your team to not make movement errors, you're going to have the best team on the planet. You're going to have the best organization on the planet, because you're going to have the best development on the planet. You're going to be set up year after year after year after year after year. And it's not really going to matter how old or young you are. What matters is when you unlock those skills. So I think that's a important thing to consider. And this is how it relates to And I think this is how it can relate to learning the video. And I think this is how it can relate to the video feedback and matching up the mechanics. Honestly, if you just get 90% of what the best players are doing, you're well on your way. Like, one, you're gonna be a heck of a lot better player. Two, you're gonna have a heck of a lot better team if you're a coach listening to this, and you're gonna have a lot better of a development system. Like, you get a player to skate 90% like McDavid on the fourth line of your team. That's still very good. Why would we not work towards something like that? So, and I think the best way to progress players to that, especially if they're trying to unlearn things that they've learned for such a long time, to move more like these best players, is through video. So if we go back to the Kucherov clip, this guy is like 190 pounds and shoots consistently hard between 80 and 90 miles an hour, which I consider as hard. They're not always slap shots. He's taking wrist shots that are that hard. It's like he's one of the smaller, skinnier, lankier players in the league. And then like you ask, and then you might ask, how can this guy shoot as hard with this lazy style shot that he has? It's like he puts no effort into his shots, and they rocket off his blade. Like, I know many of you, and myself included, have been told that it takes a lot of effort to pull off a hard shot, like an 80 to 90 mile an hour shot, but this guy does it with like ease. So I had to try it out myself. And the first time that I set up my phone and tripod, and this was before I had an iPad too, but the first time that I watched my movements, I realized one of the greatest benefits of this video feedback system. I can coach myself. And for over 10 years, I had to rely on other coaches to tell me how I was moving and where I was positionally and where, my hands and feet and shoulders were rotating and hips were like doing all this. Never once did I look at my own movement, nor could I, like just with my own eyes. If I looked down, the coach is going to say, don't look down at my feet to know where I'm going. It's like, that could be another thing to take note of, is like video feedback is designed to put you into the present so that when you execute your movements and when you execute your drills, you do your drill, then look at the footage after the fact. It's supposed to put you into the present, make you more aware of what you're actually doing. And that is why I love it. Video feedback gave me what I was looking for. It was proof that I was or was not moving the same as what I was aiming and intending to do. So it's one thing to identify yourself as a visual learner, an auditory learner, a learner by reading, and the many other ways that people find effective to learn. When you're learning movement like this, with hockey mechanics especially, you can't identify with any of those. What I've seen work is that you align the visual with the kinesthetic. Does the feel match the real? And video allows for this process to happen a hell of a lot quicker. It is way more reliable than a coach's eye or a player's eye. You cannot argue with what happens on video, and all parties involved can see the same things happening. There is no room for error when you have something like video and you're looking to improve your skills. And it literally removes a lot of possibilities for interpretation errors. It's one thing to look at how a player moves, and it's game changing to look at how your own movements next to an expert model and how you pick out what you're doing differently. It's like, seriously, I credit my biggest hockey transformations and abilities to video feedback. It has made me a way better coach, player, learner. Like, I don't just use it for hockey now. I use it for any skill that I want to learn that requires that I do some movement. And now what would take me 10 years to learn can now take me a couple weeks and maybe minutes. It's all because of video. And obviously it helps to have other coaches and communities where you're able to bounce ideas off of each other and get even more feedback from the crowd. But again, if you don't see it yourself, if you don't see yourself moving yourself, it's like, who else are you going to go to? I'm going to challenge every single one of you listening to this to film yourself. Do some kind of movement. Because if you want to cut down the learning process and take someone else's 10,000 hours as a hockey player, you need to use video to analyze your movements and make transformations a lot faster. And in just 5 years of using video feedback, I've completely changed my movement. 24 now. I was 19 at the time. So again, use video if you're not. It's readily available, easy to access. If you have a phone, you can use it. Just get a tripod if you want, or you can put it up on the side of the boards and make sure you're in frame. It's going to take a little bit of learning to make sure you're in the video frame and know how to take good shots so that you get the best quality footage. But again, one, if you get a coach who knows how to use video feedback, and two, you slowly learn over time how to use it yourself, you're set up to make a 10,000 hour transformation in minutes. So thanks for listening. I will see you next time. Get to work.